Good evening and welcome to this hearing. At this time, I'd like to ask Selectman Viger to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll do a very brief series of introductions. On my left is the Vice Chair of the Board of Selectmen, Bill McDevitt. We got Selectman Hal Lind. We've got Selectman Bob.
A police officer who's had some kind of bad history, and there's certain specific categories, then the prosecutors have an obligation to notify the defense about that in advance. Now, in this case, that 2007 incident became something that the chief reported as a lorry issue to prosecutors in 2011. So the incident happened in 2007. 4 years later, it became a lorry issue. And as I understand it, it became that issue because it was only in 2011 that the chief recognized that that was an issue that the county prosecutor wanted to be reported. I think everybody would agree, every reasonable person would agree that that really wasn't a lorry issue. Pulling over this driver who had gone 75 miles an hour and pulling out his weapon, experts would disagree about whether that was appropriate or not. But whether that was something that a judge would have to report or review and a prosecutor would report, once that decision is made, now all of a sudden Officer Stahl is on the lorry list. What that means, and it's very significant today, because if you decide to terminate this man's position, there is no chief of police in this state who will hire him, because that lorry issue marks him as somebody that is going to be difficult to put on the witness stand and might be subject to cross-examination. Now, I suggest to you that that's not a real issue, but the chiefs aren't going to be willing to take that chance, because lorry really pertains to a situation where a police officer has lied about something before. That's what they're really concerned with, so that the defense can know that this is not a trustworthy or reliable witness. But that's not what we have here. And we're spending an awful lot of time in the legal community trying to make sense out of this lorry issue, and this is one of those horrible situations that can cause somebody their career. So let me see. I want to wrap up here. I'm not sure, Mr. Mansfield, how much time I've used.
You have 15 minutes.
15 minutes? All right. I won't use all of those, but what I would like to do is, if you turn to tab 1 for a moment, this is a chart that I put together. It's a chronology. Page 1 is material that we've already gone through before, but if you turn to the next page, page 2, I just wanted to point out that from 2007 to 2013, now understand, remember, they showed you the 2007 incident, they showed you the 2008 incident, but from 2007 to 2013, Officer Stahl was a SWAT operator. He had training in 2007 by the LA Police Department SWAT team through the International Association of Chiefs of Police. Now, the LA Department SWAT team, I understand, is probably the best in the world. So Officer Stahl was one of the people who was specially selected by the chief, by this department, to do that, even at a time where they said they were concerned about whether he was the kind of representative they would want on this force. Doesn't make sense. He was elected chapter chair of the union in 2008. Now, 2009 through 2013, for that 4-year period, again, this is a period of time where they now say, boy, is this the guy you want to represent you in this community? But for that period of time, Officer Stahl served as a supervising officer in charge at the department. He had administrative responsibilities. He was one of the top, most reliable guys there. 2010, Officer Stahl was certified firearms instruction and taser instruction by the New Hampshire Police Standards and Training Academy. So not only was he able to use those things, but he was an instructor in those things and certified by the Police Standards and Training Academy to do that. 2011, he goes through commendations. So he performed CPR on a heart attack victim, saved somebody's life, received a commendation from the chief for that. There was a suicidal female who he was able to talk away from taking her own life. Another commendation there. Honorable service commendation from the chief, and the physical fitness thing. And then finally in 2012, that's where we'll leave off here, rifle instruction. So this is not, contrary to what you've heard earlier on this evening, this is not a guy who's not reliable, not the kind of person you want to have representing you in the field. I want to just wrap up, I guess, by having you turn to tab 2. And this is a compilation of some of the comments that the chief made in the annual reports. Now, we have submitted, oops, I'm not sure if we've got them all here, but I understand that the police department has submitted personnel evaluations. And one thing I do want to talk about is just the public nature of this hearing. The truth is that, warts and all, Officer Stahl is proud of his career at the Pelham Police Department. He was fully aware that there might be press coverage here. He was fully aware that the police department might present those videos. And he's willing to be seen by members of this community and by you, but fairly for his 12 and a half years of hard work and good service to this community, and hopefully continuing on after this. But some of these things are reflected in the chief's comments, and I know Mr. Nicosia tried to downplay that, saying, well, the chief was just being nice, and there are some critical aspects as well. But I think if you read these, and I want to just take a few minutes to do some of this. So February of 2009, and I'm quoting Chief Rourke here, I don't think Eugene understands how integral he is to the department. Young officers admire his patrol skills and look to him for leadership. I enjoy Eugene as a friend, understand his patrol skills are irreplaceable to the department. His activity and effort are consistent, which I appreciate. Keep up the effort and try to keep everyone involved at being the best department we can be. August of 2009, Eugene's improvements in teamwork, public relations, and activity are noted and appreciated. Keep up the hard work. March of 2011, Officer Stahl is highly respected by his peers, as he is a very experienced patrol officer. He does everything asked of him in a workman fashion, including supervising shifts when necessary. As I commented before, I also respect and consider many of Officer Stahl's opinions regarding the operation of the department as a whole. As Union President, Officer Stahl has worked diligently to have a cooperative relationship between the union and the administration of the department, which I highly appreciate. Officer Stahl has the ability and following to galvanize much of the department to accomplish goals and objectives, whether regarding how he runs his shift or department-wide. However, he must work hard at bringing into the fold the more difficult-to-reach employees and not just the talented or motivated members. January of 2012, Officer Stahl is an outstanding patrol officer. August 2012, impressive evaluation. Eugene's willingness to take on responsibility is noted and appreciated. January of 2013, I need Officer Stahl's support with our policy implementation and accreditation efforts. Keep up the good work. Taken together, viewed fairly, this man is a fine officer. He's had a great career with the Pelham Police Department. He looks forward to more time if you decide that some lesser discipline is appropriate. That's something that's well within your authority to do. Our idea is that he's already been on suspension for a period of about 4 months, I believe it is. It's time to put him back to work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Department.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Attorney Mansfield, I do have some pointed comments. I'm not going to rehash evidence. You have a lot of documentation in front of you. You have these videos. You have the full investigation reports. You can look at those on your own as you deliberate, but there are some pointed rebuttals I'd like to make. In inverse order, correlating to Attorney Slawsky's comments, if you look at the performance reviews, we readily admit that there are positive comments in them. The idea behind the performance review is to uplift. Chief Rourke is not looking to, in those reports, to take the officer down. He's looking to constructively criticize, improve, move on, and grow. No critique in any of those reports that I have included as exhibits in our submission relate to Officer Stahl's capacity as a union representative. They are related to his ability to manage and perform the job functions outside of the union. And I think if you look at those reports, that will be very clear to you as you go through them. Some pointed rebuttal on the individual events. The first video we showed of the intoxicated female and the interrogation at the scene, look at that video again in your own time. Read the transcript, look at the reports. There's nothing in that video to justify him elevating the hostility of conduct towards that particular defendant. When he gets on the scene is secure. The car is not moving. The female is in a custodial situation. The other officers have already investigated this whole issue of whether or not there was another driver, and they didn't believe that was the case. And in the first statement she makes to Officer Stahl, I was driving. There were no exigent circumstances there that warranted such a hostile interrogation to thwart some emergency, that impending doom. It just didn't exist. That was anger, that was emotion, and that was conduct completely violative of the policies and procedures in that environment. The evidence will speak to itself. And with all due respect to counsel, what secretaries and retired lawyers and retired police officers think is not relevant. It's not part of the fact evidence in this case. If there were expert opinions to be submitted, they could be submitted. But I see nothing to that effect. With regards to the use of the handgun incident, in hindsight, they're trying to correlate those facts and circumstances to the shooting of which he was striked at. In the incident with the chase of the woman, the intoxicated patron, they're trying to correlate that to the past shooting, and maybe there's some tie to that prior event, and he's concerned that that's a potential suspect or some relationship to it. It's never mentioned in any of the reports. Such a pivotal issue of a further criminal investigation involving a shooting. These officers are well trained to put germane and significant issues in their reports of these types of events. There's no mention of that in there. This is hindsight justification to try and explain that conduct. Also, this issue of counseling. There's no request for counseling. That situation was analyzed. The officer could have requested counseling in connection with those circumstances from the department. He didn't do so. Once again, no evidence of that issue in any of the reports or in any of the investigations. I would ask you to take a look at those reports in greater detail. In regards to the juveniles with the use of the firearm, there's nothing in the policy and procedures when you compare it to that fact pattern in that video that justifies escalating that matter to the potential use of deadly force. I'm sure we'll both argue that in our briefs, but I would ask you to take a look at those policies and procedures in light of those facts. There's nothing there. This issue of the Lorry list, I look as a tangential issue. What is career-ending for Officer Stahl are the events themselves, not the reporting of certain of these events to an county attorney's list for potential credibility issues in criminal prosecutions. We're not seeking to terminate Officer Stahl because he's on the Lorry list. It's the events themselves that lead to the termination. I don't find the Lorry list issue to be particularly relevant, whereas your focus should be on the events themselves and whether or not they violate the policies and procedures, and that's certainly the case here. The standards are very, very high for police officers. Police officers are in a risky business. The policies and procedures about dealing with these provocative environments, these hostile settings, are very clear. They're trained very well to deal under those types of circumstances, so that there isn't a high tolerance for misstep and missteps of this kind. You can't excuse his conduct in these individual events because of a particular certification or a commendation in another matter. You have to look at these events. This is not a singular event. This is a pattern of events. There are numerous events. There are numerous disciplinary proceedings. There are numerous events of this type of conduct which is a threat to the citizens of this town. Officers should be on the streets, should be respected as life safety public servants, not feared for this type of conduct. If you look at this event standing on its own, combined with the progressive discipline, the progressive constructive criticism, the prior non-termination disciplines are obviously not working. The conduct is continuing. Termination is the only answer here. Thank you.
Thank you. Just briefly, termination is not called for here in our view. 3 events over 6 years, is that really a pattern? 4 minutes of video showing a 12-and-a-half-year career. It doesn't make sense to me. These gentlemen are in tough positions, there's no question about it. The gentleman in uniform sitting to my left, I'm sure they've all been with Officer Stahl in dangerous situations, and hopefully they'll get the opportunity to do that again. I would have no trouble at all in trusting Officer Stahl with a situation in which my life was endangered, and I think if you review this 12-and-a-half-year history fairly, I think you'll reach the same conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of the post-hearing briefs, they'll be due August 28th, and I'd ask that you send them to my attention. I will distribute them to the board.
When do you want those by? Is it
7 days, so August 28th.
August 28th? Can we email them to you? Is
Yes.
that good?
Thank you.
Thank you. This meeting is now concluded. We will adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you.